On the 13th of May, 2000, residents in the Dutch city of Enschede noticed smoke in the sky. A small industrial complex in the northern part of the city was on fire. Fire engines made their way towards the blaze while people watched from a safe distance, fully expecting to see it brought under control within a few hours. Instead, at around 3:30 p.m, a massive explosion shook the entire city, obliterating a whole neighbourhood in a matter of moments. SE Fireworks was founded in 1977. At that time, it was a relatively small company which manufactured its own fireworks for sale to the public. The site was well managed and the workers extremely safety conscious, something which resulted in there being no major incidents at all for many years. This excellent safety record, coupled with a range of high-quality products, allowed SE Fireworks to grow swiftly, and it was soon providing pyrotechnics for annual festivals throughout the Netherlands, as well as for high-profile concerts by artists including Michael Jackson and Bon Jovi. Of course, this success meant that their business model had to change. It was no longer practical to make their fireworks themselves. Instead, they started importing them from abroad. The site became primarily a fireworks storage depot rather than a fireworks factory, although some work was still done on site to customize fireworks to meet the particular needs of clients. This shift in focus allowed SE Fireworks to take on more clients and expand their business still further, to the point that capacity became a bit of a problem. The site at Enschede consisted of a few workshops and numerous concrete bunkers where fireworks could be stored. In 1977, there was capacity enough for 18,000 kilograms, or 18 tons, of fireworks. But by the late 1990s, SE Fireworks were packing 10 times that amount of explosive material into the same space. To alleviate the storage problem, a few new bunkers were installed, and SE Fireworks was granted permission to bring in some shipping containers. These were a temporary solution, of course. They'd eventually have to move to a bigger site, but for the time being, the shipping containers provided ample space for their excess stock. Especially since, in addition to the containers they'd been granted permission for, SE Fireworks quietly added several extra ones too. The end result was a site that was packed with explosives, way more than it had been designed for, and way more than anyone outside of SE Fireworks would ever reasonably suspect. To make matters worse, while SE Fireworks had been growing as a company, Enschede had been growing as a city. The SE Fireworks site had, when first built, been surrounded by nothing but trees and fields. Gradually, over the course of the 1980s and 1990s, this empty space was filled with new housing, until SE Fireworks found itself surrounded by residential neighbourhoods. Some houses stood directly adjacent to the depot. Few people fully appreciated the danger inherent in this. When one resident complained, the city council of Enschede fobbed them off, explaining that the land on which SE Fireworks was built was clearly zoned for industrial use. As far as they were concerned, the fact that the zoning was technically correct meant that there was no issue to be addressed. The definitive cause of the fire has never been determined, but it may have been down to a short circuit or electrical fault in a piece of equipment in workshop C2. It was a Saturday, and according to normal rules of operation, this workshop should have been clean and empty. It wasn't. In fact, it was packed with hundreds of fireworks, some of them stored in open containers or lying out on workbenches. The fire ignited these fireworks, causing them to shoot off from the burning building and set fire to other structures on the site. By the time the fire service arrived on scene, the blaze was already well established. Noting that there were explosives on site, the fire service set up a cordon, but it was a cordon based on an incorrect assessment of how much explosive material was present. They had no idea to what an extensive degree SE Fireworks had been overfilling their available storage space. By 3:30 p.m, the fire had spread to and penetrated the bunkers where the majority of the fireworks were stored. One bunker detonated, setting off a chain reaction that seconds later caused the others to explode too. Flames and shockwaves rippled through the surrounding neighbourhood. Onlookers were thrown to the ground, glass shattered, buildings collapsed, and several of the firefighters on scene were killed almost instantly. Following the explosion, more resources were brought in to fight the flames, including several engines from Germany, who crossed the border to help. By the end of the day, the fire was under control, but it was too late for many of those affected. 22 people were killed in the explosion, including 4 firefighters. Nearly 1,000 people sustained injuries requiring treatment, and the neighbourhood which surrounded the site was almost completely destroyed. Buildings that weren't flattened were damaged to the point of structural instability and had to be demolished, leaving thousands of people without homes. An investigation was undertaken but couldn't determine the initial cause of the fire, as the site of the disaster was comprehensively destroyed. It was revealed, though, that SE Fireworks had violated numerous safety rules. The doors of shipping containers had been left open. Unapproved fireworks had been stored on site. No separation distance had been maintained between containers, and those extra shipping containers had been added to the site without permission. And yet, despite all of this, the site had passed a safety audit just a few weeks before the disaster. How could this be possible? In the end, it was concluded that local authorities, national authorities, and the operators of SE Fireworks were all to share some of the blame. On a national level, departments which might have intervened before an explosion could take place had been stripped back, underfunded, or reorganised to the point that nobody was entirely sure whose responsibility it was to deal with issues like unsafe industrial installations. Was it down to the Environmental Investigation Bureau, or the Dutch Ministry of Housing? Or was it perhaps the purview of the Hazardous Materials Inspection Agency, just one of several branches of government that had been eliminated in the 1990s? Local authorities, at the same time, were criticised for their complacency. Inspections had been cursory, with inspectors routinely not issuing fines even when they did see a breach of protocol. It was, perhaps, a case of reduced hazard awareness. SE Fireworks had never seen a serious incident until the explosion. After 2 whole decades of operating safely, it might have seemed to inspectors to be not that important to stick rigidly to every single rule. Exceptions could be made for a business which had proven itself with such a good safety record. Finally, the operators of SE Fireworks were guilty of the same complacency. The company had started out with an acute awareness of the need to operate safely. But time had passed. The business had grown. No serious accidents had taken place. And, little by little, it had started to seem less and less important to adhere as closely to the rules as they used to. If they had been at all concerned about how close they were to a residential area, that concern had been tempered by the perception that an accident was vanishingly unlikely. All had been well for more than 2 decades, so why should they worry about something going wrong now? In the end, though there was much criticism of all parties involved, few people faced any real consequences. 2 of the owners of SE Fireworks were given small fines and short prison sentences. So short, in fact, that they were easily covered by the time that they'd already spent in custody awaiting trial. Meanwhile, the Dutch government undertook a huge programme of reform focused on the handling of fireworks. A national catalogue of every warehouse storing fireworks was created, and, along with several other measures, clearly defined safety distances were set. Any installation holding fireworks for sale to the public would need to be 30 metres, or 98 feet, away from any other building, and any installation storing fireworks for sale to business customers would need to be isolated by 800 meters, or 2,600 feet, from any other significant structure. This requirement meant that more than half of fireworks storage facilities in the Netherlands were closed or moved, a massive undertaking that would never have happened were it not for the explosion which devastated Enschede. Though it came at a terrible cost, tens of thousands of people in the Netherlands now live and work in places that are no longer at risk of being destroyed in a similar explosion.